Hello, and welcome to Painting with Stephen episode 8. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're watching this, and let's get right into it. So, as you can see, I've done some acrylic layers before my oil painting, which you're about to see. So, first I toned the canvas with an umber, a very washed down umber in acrylic. Then I painted a bluish purple mass, which I'm now painting over right now, as you can see with the grey, in the centre of the sky. And then I painted a ruin of a castle and some rocks at the side there, the left. I also painted 3 little sticks because I want to make another fire, like I did in episode 7 if you've watched that. So, currently I'm going in with some umber, some Paynes Grey, some white. This time it's titanium white, just because I wanted a little more saturation with the white used this time around. And I'm painting where this bluish purple mass is. The reason I'm doing this, and the reason that I've painted the bluish purple mass in and let it dry in acrylic, is so that when I wipe out, which I'm going to, you're going to see that blue and purple shine through the grey, just so that it gives this almost like the blue and purple is inside the cloud. That's the effect that I wanted to try and go for anyway. Right now you can see I'm getting a palette knife and just putting in very dark darks into the right corner there, the top right corner. And then I'm adding a little bit of white in and just, mucking it around with a fan brush there. Now, this is all just about getting paint onto the canvas. Like we've talked about that before on this channel. At the end of the day, you just apply paint, to the canvas however you see fit, and you can rework it while it's on there. So, I just wanted to get this black mass in so that I can then start playing around with it, adding a little bit more stuff in, because I want the right hand side to be darker than everything else, just for this overbearing sort of storm-like effect. Now, just for me to talk about something a little bit while that's going on, the ruin of the castle is very loosely based on one that I saw in Arran called Locranza Castle, but it's absolutely by no means the same. It is, again, a from imagination painting. This is all from imagination. It's nothing really like Locranza Castle. I took the vague shape of the sort of tower to the right of the ruin from Locranza. Everything else is pretty much from imagination, but I wanted a sort of eerie sort of archway into the castle on the left, and I just wanted the ruin to sort of be this interesting Western European style castle ruin that you see all the time in Scotland, so I've amalgamated several different ideas from several different ruins. In Ayrshire, where I come from, there's castle ruins, like you could throw a stone and hit a castle ruin. So, there's so many of them that, when you do a lot of hill walking like I do, you can find all of these beautiful castles just lying around to take inspiration from. Now, here's me adding in some lights, okay? Now, the way I've gotten that light, because as you can see, it's off-white. It's not pure white. It's off-white. I've mixed a little bit of Naples Yellow in with my titanium, right, to give me a little tinted white. And then I've mixed that up with a palette knife, and I've just cut in with my palette knife so there's a tiny bit of paint on the edge of the palette knife, and then I've inserted my lightning bolt in with the palette knife. Okay, now you could do this in other ways. Okay, I've I wanted to use a palette knife this time because I like the effect. I like how it sort of almost looks like a jagged fork through the sky. It looks almost not too textured. You know, you're not using a lot of paint, but there is like some texture there. You could, however, if you wanted to use like a rigger brush, you know, you could water down your paint so that, you know, with linseed oil, so that, or thinner, so that you know, it's easy to apply, so that you can, you know, get your nice thin strokes in. Personally, I prefer sometimes when I'm doing like very thin lines to use my palette knife with no thinning of the paint, because of course one of the main things with palette knife techniques is to keep your paint as thick as possible. You know, now as you can see, I added a little bit of that off-white colour with the Naples Yellow mixed in into the side of the castle, just to tint it a little bit, so that it looks like the lightning is slightly hitting the right side of the castle. And now I'm adding in my bonfire beside the castle. I'm taking, you know, my orange and my yellows, which are cadmium, and I'm making a fog, this fog around the bonfire. I liked how that technique worked in episode 7. I liked how it worked out in episode 7, if you watched that episode. So I'm doing it again. And, you know, I'm trying to bring out the little logs in the middle, so I don't want to, you know, put too much paint on there to obscure the logs, you know, in the fire. I want them to shine through my paint, so I feel like I had a happy medium there. And now, you know, I wanted to create this sort of ochreish, yellowish, orange glow around the fire, as if, you know, that's the you know, the incredible sort of like smoke coming from this little bonfire, you know, that's right beside this rune. So that's what I'm doing right now, literally just, you know, allowing that colour to get muddied. We talked about that last episode as well. Allow those oranges and those yellows to get muddied. There's no problem with it. You don't want them to be saturated. You want them to mix in with what you've got. And I'm not so sure if you've noticed that I also added a little bit of that orange and yellow to the left of the castle room, so that it looks like there's a little bit of illumination on the left side of the room. Now, let's talk about scumbling for a moment, okay? One of the benefits of having acrylic layers, okay? Now, you could do this in oil. You could paint all these layers in oil, wait for months for them to dry, and then paint oil layers on top. Of course, that's what the old masters did. That's what a lot of painters before us did. But we have acrylic, okay? I like my final layer to be oil because of its incredible texturing effect, okay? However, I see no problem with using acrylics for the bottom layers, as long as they're dry when you apply the oil. The reason for this, of course, is if your acrylic layers are still drying, and sometimes they can be dry to the touch but not completely dry, watch that, what will happen is the water will evaporate underneath your oil layer, and then your oil will start peeling, okay? So this is why you need to make sure it's completely dry, okay? Now, going back to the scumbling, and by the way, if you don't know, scumbling is where you apply thick oil paint onto a dry layer, but then sort of move it around so that you can see the subsequent dry layer beneath the oil layer that you've just put on, okay? It's sort of a similar idea to glazing, except glazing you sort of want the layers to be more transparent by watering them down with, you know, some sort of medium like linseed oil, whatever. People use liquid now, you know, because it's faster drying. But essentially, the benefit and advantage to that is you can do what I just did with my off-white colour to the right of the castle and my orange yellowish colour of the fire to the left of the castle. I hope I just did that right there. But basically, what you want to do is you want to just put a little bit of that colour, move it around, and of course the dry layer won't move, right? So then you're actually still going to see the colours, you know, like that are underneath, but you're not going to like have the issue of it moving around like if it was a wet layer. So this is where the advantage of having, you know, paintings with layered paints comes in, you know, where you have, you know, your, you know, like first layer, second layer, third layer. You can add so much by just building and building and building on these ideas, building on the colours that came underneath them, doing subsequent colour mixing on top. And as you can see now, I'm at the stage where I'm adding my reflections into the water. So, you know, again, don't be afraid of dirty colour. I wanted my off-white colour in the centre of the piece to be not as muddy as my yellow and orange, okay, because it's a stronger light. So basically I kept the centre just my black gesso, right, so that it's stronger, and now I'm just, you know, like taking the sides and blending out the sides a little bit with my palette knife, but with at the left where you see the orange and yellow, I just went straight in to the Paynes Grey, Umber, Ivory Black mix that I put at the sides, okay, so that my yellows and oranges actually just mixed right in, so that you get that dirtied colour again. Now that's the final result, and I'm very happy with the final result. I'm very happy with it. I'm really enjoying this acrylic layer first thing. I really am. I'm really enjoying that style of painting right now. I'm not going to be doing that the next episode, I don't think. I think I'm going to be doing a nocturne again with silhouettes. Maybe another Aaron inspired painting. So I'll see how that goes, but thank you very much for joining me for this episode, and I hope you've learned something new. So thank you and goodbye.